Welcome into the Important Nonsense YouTube Waiver Show. It's me, Jason Draven, with two teams on bye, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Carolina Panthers coming up this week. This is going to be the last week of byes, guys, so moving forward, it's going to get really interesting. But this past week was a weird one. Let's get into my picks for this week. My miss from last week's show is Derek Carr. Makes me want to move off of him, even if he has a good matchup. With that in mind, I'll bring you all back to 2015 with the first half of this show. Kirk Cousins is my first quarterback, rostered in 20.4% with 4 quarterbacks left to play. Cousins is currently QB3 for the week. He is going up against a team that presently has Baker Mayfield at QB9. In 8 of 11 games, Cousins has thrown for multiple touchdowns and over 240 yards. If Mike Glennon continues to sling it, Cousins will have to throw and should go over the 240 mark and 2 TDs, especially if Cook is still nursing this injury. He gets the Jaguars this week, which allows quarterbacks to put up 30.5 fantasy points. The next quarterback is Phillip Rivers. You know, I love this kid. Rostered in 13.2% of leagues. He's very inconsistent, drives you crazy, but a player that I hope finds his way to the Super Bowl. He is currently quarterback 11 on the week. I am pretty Colts heavy this week because I love the matchup and I think they continue to do well and have to throw. This week, he gets Deshaun Watson, who is really putting up some great numbers. With him having to throw, he should be able to a good option this week. Also, the Texans give up 21.5 fantasy points to quarterbacks. Moving to running backs, James White, 48.4% rostered. Since Rex Burkhead has gone out and is placed on IR, White has taken on both roles and is eating them up. He had 2 rushing touchdowns this past week in a situation that was made for Cam and Burkhead. Harris and Cam even had a shot in the same drive and couldn't get it done, and then White was able to just come in and bounces in nice and easy, makes it look so easy, just not even fair for the kid. He saw 1 target this week, but last week he led the team and had 9 targets. Oh, and the Chargers gave up 26.5 fantasy points to the running back position. Frank Gore is 18.9% rostered, with Michael P. Ryan going to IR. Gore is set to be an RB2 for the rest of the season. I mean, Gase loves him. This week he put up 74 yards on 18 carries. Amazing. He also caught all 3 of his targets for 12 yards, getting a majority of the work. I think he continues to play and had 4.1 yards per carry this week and last week. Last week he had 15 carries for 61 yards and a touchdown, and caught both of his targets for 10 yards. Decent weeks, nothing shiny, but definitely will continue to produce. He gets to go up against the Raiders, who give up 23 fantasy points to the running back position. Next player, guy I told you a while ago to pick up, is Latavius Murray, is 46.3% rostered. I brought him up because he should be a handcuff that you have with Alvin Kamara. Now, with Breeze out, Murray is between the tackles runner. This week, he led the team in carries, having 19, putting up 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kamara, for example, only had 11 carries this past week for 54 yards. And Hill, also being the more mobile quarterback that he is, had 10 carries and 2 touchdowns of his own. He doesn't need to check down. As you've seen over the past 2 weeks, he's only thrown it 6 times to the running back position. This week, he has a tough matchup, but the Steelers do allow 19 fantasy points per game to running backs. And we have seen Miles Sanders break off a long run and a couple other players break off long runs against the Steeler defense. Here are some names to keep in mind. If Todd Gurley remains out, I still like Ito Smith. He was the one who really seemed to come in the red zone and definitely just looked like a better runner. The other one is somebody I brought up last week in Cam Akers. He has so much potential. He found the end zone again this week, and if he ever gets control of that backfield, he is going to be quite a fantasy option for you. Moving on to wide receiver, he's still here. Michael Pittman, 37.6% rostered. I know, you all hated his protection this past week. I was right there with you, but guess what? He had 9 targets this week. That's the most targets he's had all year. Granted, he only caught 2 of them for 28 yards. I know, not great. However, Hilton has shown he is still a viable option and will continue to pull the coverage that he needs to make Pittman an easier play. Plus, this week he gets the Texans. This week he gets the Texans. There you go, haha, who give up 40.1 fantasy points to the wide receiver, or 10th most fantasy points to wide receiver. The next player is Allen Lazard, 27.8% rostered. This week he gets the Eagles. With Slay likely covering Devontae Adams, as he should, I feel like Lazard gets enough targets to be reliable. He has seen more work each week since coming back from his injury. This past week, he caught 4 of 6 passes for 23 yards and a touchdown. And finally, Denzel Mims, 4.9% rostered. In the last 3 games, he's seen 8 targets per game and is averaging over 60 yards. If he finds the end zone, he easily slides into a flex position currently, where he's averaging 10 points over these past 3 weeks. If he adds a touchdown, he makes it even higher and is even a better fantasy option. Raiders give up 36.6 fantasy points to the wide receiver. With this week being the first week with Sam Darnold back, I think he continues to build that relationship with Mims. So here are some other names to kind of keep an eye on. The other side of the ball with him is Rashard Perriman. I mean, he's opposite of Mims. It's kind of the same position, but I think Mims has more talent. Josh Reynolds is another great one. Interesting, as he continues to be very very active in the Rams offense and continues to see more and more targets. BC Johnson, if Thielen remains out, is an also viable option. With John Brown also going on IR, Gabriel Davis could be a sneaky play. And in Dynasty, we saw what Glennon could do, and Colin Johnson had a great day and made a splash in his opportunity this past week. Moving on to tight ends, guys are going to get to hear about them yet again. Pick them up, make it so they're not on my list. But Dalton Schultz, 30.3% rostered. Again, not flashy, but he continues to see targets. This week, Dalton will likely be under pressure from the Ravens, which means he's going to have to pass it as soon as he can. The Ravens allow 12 fantasy points to the tight end position. Schultz has a talent and can easily get it done and find the end zone. The other one, again, told you it was going to be Colts heavy. It's Trey Burton, 6% rostered. He continues to find the end zone. He continues to see targets from Rivers. This past week, he got 3 of 6 targets for 42 yards and a touchdown. He is being targeted 4 more times than Mo Alley Cox this past week and 5 more times than Jack Doyle, who had 2 and 1 target recept for each player. He is the red zone threat for this team. Another name to check out is Robert Tonyan, who still seems to get targets, and it seems to be more and more fantasy relevant the past 2 weeks. Another player, if Irv Smith remains out and Thielen also is out, Kyle Rudolph, as you saw this past week, was a great fantasy option for you guys. Finally, we'll move into defense. The Kansas City Chiefs, 42.6% rostered. I know, not too flashy and not one of my favorites, but this team continues to put it up. The last time this team played the Broncos, they've had Locke and put up 21 fantasy points. If anyone else is playing at quarterback, this number could be even bigger. After what we saw this past week and a juicy matchup, I think the Chiefs take advantage. Finally, the Las Vegas Raiders, 3.4% rostered. I know, I'm not surprised they are here too. And they looked really bad this past week. However, this week the matchup is just too good. It is the Jets. Do I need to say more? This defense isn't bad, but it isn't great. I do think that they get after Sam Darnold, and you can probably see a couple of picks. The Jets will remain at 0 wins, with Darnold being under center. He will continue to have turnovers, and the Raiders will get after him. Now, I'm going to mention it because you should. If you can stash the Cardinals now, I would, because after this week they have the Rams, but their matchups get even better for the rest of the season. Now you can find me on all the socials using the handle ThatFFNerd everywhere. If you have some time, take it. Check out reportnonsense.com. And as always, remember to keep up the nonsense.